I am sought of them that ask not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me, unto a nation that was not called by my name. I have spread out my hands all the day to a rebellious people, which walked in a way that was not good after their own thoughts, of people that provoke me to anger continually to my face, that sacrifice in God hymns and burn incense upon altars of brick, which remain among the graves, which lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh, and the broth of abominations is in their vessels, which say, stand by thyself, come not near to me.
The Phantom Power. Come on, Phantom Power. There we go, Phantom Power. All right. Good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing our study today in Exodus chapter 25. We've had some winds blowing through here. I think that was just the head of it, but we did have a little power interruption. So if it goes dark, we'll see what happens. We may have to break it up. All right, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth it willingly with his heart ye shall take my offering. And this is the offering which ye shall take of them: gold, and silver, and brass, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and rams' skins dyed red, and badgers' skins, and shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod, and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall ye make it. And they shall make an ark of shittim wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold. Within and without shalt thou overlay it, and shalt make upon it a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in the 4 corners thereof. And 2 rings shall be in the one side of it, and 2 rings in the other side of it. Thou shalt make staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. And thou shalt put staves into the rings by the sides of the ark, that the ark may be borne with them. The staves shall be in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it. And thou shalt put into the ark the testimony which I shall give thee. And thou shalt make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof. And thou shalt make 2 cherubims of gold, of beaten work shalt thou make them, and the 2 ends of the mercy seat. And make 1 cherub of the one end, and the other cherub of the other end. Even of the mercy seat shall ye make the cherubims on the 2 ends thereof. And the cherubims shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings. And their faces shall look one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And thou shalt make the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark shalt thou put the testimony that I shall give thee. And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubims, which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. Thou shalt also make a table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and 1 cubit the breadth thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, and make thereunto a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt make unto it a border of a handbreadth round about, and thou shalt make a golden crown to the border thereof round about. And thou shalt make it for 4 rings of gold, and put the rings in the 4 corners that are on the 4 feet thereof. Over against the border shall the rings be for places of the staves to bear the table. And thou shalt make the staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold, that the table may be borne with them. And thou shalt make the dishes thereof, and the spoons thereof, and covers thereof, and bowls thereof, to cover withal. Of pure gold shalt thou make them. And thou shalt set upon the table showbread before me always. And thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work shall the candlestick be made, his shaft, and his branches, his bowls, his knops, and his flowers shall be of the same. And 6 branches shall come out of the sides of it, 3 branches of the candlestick out on one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out on the other side. 3 bowls made like unto almonds, with a knop and a flower in one branch, and 3 bowls made like almonds on the other branch, with a knop and a flower, so in 6 branches that come out of the candlestick. And in the candlestick shall be 4 bowls made like unto almonds, with their knops and their flowers. And there shall be a knop under 2 branches of the same, and a knop under the branches of the same, and a knop under 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that proceed out of the candlestick. Their knops and their branches shall be of the same, and it shall all be one beaten work of pure gold. And thou shalt make 7 lamps thereof, the 7 lamps thereof, and they shall light the lamps thereof, that they may give light over against it. And the tongs thereof and the snuff dishes thereof shall be of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold shall he make it, with all these vessels. And look thou, make them after their pattern which was showed thee in the mount. I'm going to keep reading. Moreover, thou shalt make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, and blue, and purple, and scarlet. With cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them. The length of one curtain shall be 28 cubits, the breadth of one curtain 4 cubits. And every one of the curtains shall have one measure. The 5 curtains shall be coupled together one to another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled one to another. And thou shalt make loops of blue upon the edge of one curtain from the selved edge in the coupling, and likewise shalt thou make in the uttermost edge of another curtain in the coupling of the second. 50 loops shalt thou make in one curtain, and 50 loops shalt thou make in the edge of a curtain that is in the coupling of the second, that the loops may be, I'm not reading well, that the loops may take hold one of another. It's hard to read stereo instructions, which is the way it reads. And thou shalt make 50 taches of gold, and couple the curtains together with the taches, and it shall be one tabernacle. And thou shalt make curtains of goat's hair to be a covering upon the tabernacle. 11 curtains shalt thou make. The length of one curtain shall be 30 cubits, the breadth of one curtain certain 4 cubits. I keep wanting to say certain because of my bad eyes. Curtain 4 cubits. And the 11 curtains shall be all of one measure. And thou shalt couple 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and shalt double the 6th curtain in the forefront of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make 50 loops on the edge of one curtain that is outmost in the couplings, and 50 loops in the edge of the curtain which coupleth the second. And thou shalt make 50 taches of brass, and put the taches into the loops, and couple the tent together that it may be one. And the remnant that remaineth of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remaineth, shall hang over the backside of the tabernacle. And a cubit on the one side, and a cubit on the other side of that which remaineth in the length of the curtains of the tent. It shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side and on that side to cover it. And thou shalt make a covering for the tent of ram skins dyed red, and a covering above of badgers' skins. And thou shalt make boards of the tabernacles of shittim wood, standing up. 10 cubits shall the length of a board, and 10 cubits shall be the length of a board, and 1.5 cubits shall be the breadth of one board. 2 tenons shall there be in one board, set in order, one against another. Thus shalt thou make for all the boards of the tabernacle. And thou shalt make the boards of the tabernacle 20 boards on the south side southward, and thou shalt make 40 sockets of silver under the 20 boards. 2 sockets under one board for his 2 tenons, and 2 sockets under another board for his 2 tenons. And for the second side of the tabernacle on the north side there shall be 20 boards. And the 40 sockets of silver, 2 sockets under one board, and 2 sockets under another board. And for the sides of the tabernacle westward shalt thou make 6 boards. And 2 boards shalt thou make for the corners of the tabernacle in the 2 sides. And they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above the head of it, unto one ring. And thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above the head of it, unto one ring. Thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And they shall be 8 boards, and their sockets of silver 16 sockets, 2 sockets under one board, and 2 sockets under another board. And thou shalt make bars of shittim wood, 5 for the boards of the one side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the boards of the other side of the tabernacle, and 5 bars for the board of the side of the tabernacle for the 2 sides westward. In the middle bar, in the midst of the 2 boards, shall reach from end to end. And thou shalt overlay the boards with gold, and make their rings of gold for places for the bars. And thou shalt overlay the bars with gold. And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof which was showed thee in the mount. And thou shalt make a veil of blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen of cunning work. With cherubims shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon the 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. The hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And thou shalt set the table without the veil, and the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south. And thou shalt put the table on the north side. And thou shalt make an hanging of the door of the tent of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen, wrought with needlework. And thou shalt make for the hanging 5 pillars of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. And the hooks shall be of gold, and thou shalt cast 5 sockets of brass for them. Goes on a long about for the tabernacle. Maybe I shouldn't have entered into chapter 26, because I certainly don't want to read it twice as far as tomorrow. We'll see. Because there's a lot of, we have to understand for this is that tabernacle which has passed away, just as the temple has passed away. As Jesus said in John chapter 4, when he met with the Samaritan woman, he said, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. But you see how at this time, what detail it went into, and there is certainly symbolic significance to all of this. Some of the details obviously will be beyond my understanding, especially because I'm not going to go and bring out all kinds of models of the tabernacle. I'm going to talk of it in more, less carnal aspects. All right, first of all, he said, speak to them. He's gone up back into the mountain. Remember, he's going to be up there 40 days and 40 nights. When he comes down, he's going to find them, as we know, worshiping the golden calf. But in the meantime, he receives all the instructions for the tabernacle and for the ark and for the vessels and the altar and, of course, the Holy of Holies. So first he says, they bring me an offering. Every man that giveth willingly with his heart. And God likes a willing and cheerful giver. It should not be something, because this is not transactional. God is not bought with bribes or gifts. You know, gifts corrupt the heart of the wise, as it says. Well, God is incorruptible. But he sees our corrupt intent. And if it not be willingly, then it best not be given. You know, we need to let go of the things we think we possess in life, even our own lives. That's why we offer our own lives as a living sacrifice. We may not be particularly worthy of that sort of pureness, but that's the idea. We are purified in Christ. He is the one that makes us acceptable to God. There's nothing I can do to make myself acceptable to God. But I can walk worthy of the calling or do my best in that regard. And certainly I expect to do, I expect to do better than my own best. In the New Testament, when Paul talks about the rewards of the rewards we receive from service to Christ, he puts them in terms of, wood. Well, first, gold, silver, brass, precious stones. I probably should have ranked precious stones above brass. Wood, hay, stubble. These are just symbolic of relative value and worth. Obviously, the best things to bring to God are gold. Now, gold is not that God values gold. God puts gold on the street in the new heavens and the new earth to demonstrate that it's so common. It's the kind of thing you pave your streets with. Gold is not a significantly valuable thing to God in any sense, but we value it. Like a lot of things in the Bible, you gotta understand, especially in the law. This is the thing I was thinking of the other day that I didn't bring back up, but I'm going to bring it up because a lot of the things that are described in the Old Testament law are not just for the hardness of men's hearts, but for the hardness of their eyes and for the hardness of their ears and for their inability to understand the shape of the heavenly things. That's why these things were called a shadow of what was to come, which is Christ, because in him is revealed the fullness of God, and not just a shadow. Because men's hearts were not ready to receive the fullness of God, it had to be communicated to them in a way that they could somehow attempt to relate to. I said, if the laws come down, the laws are good and perfect for those people, but they are for their hard hearts. There is divorce, there's slavery, and we discussed that extensively. Because men will sell their children, because life is difficult and hard. And what are you going to do? Force him to watch his children die? And that's the thing. People of a modern sensibility and also modern arrogancy, because there are more slaves in the world probably than there ever were in the days of Abraham, just because there's more people in the world and people are still the same. They force people to do things against their will. They hold men against their conscience and against their will also. I didn't want to say will twice, but I threw in conscience. We want our works that we bring to God to be of the highest value that we can bring. And that's always compared to earthly things, because what heavenly thing will we compare it to? So it has to be gold, because men to this very day, they're like, oh, gold, 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 gold. Let me tell you something about investing in gold. You invest with one of these gold groups that gives you a gold IRA or something. Someday, all the electronics are going to wink out, and you won't be able to access all that electronically obtained gold. And, so what are you left with? You have to obtain actual gold bars, I suppose. But again, that's of limited value. Gold becomes less value. I mean, some people are always going to be willing to take it. Yes. Someday your, $3,000 gold bar will buy you a loaf of bread. But remember, in the book of Joel, it says they sell a girl for wine. Men will sell their souls for very little. When push comes to shove, when the things that bind them, they will take things that are worth much more than gold, such as a child, and trade it for their sinful pleasures. And they will kill you and sell you, body and soul, dead or alive. They don't care. Men of wicked intent who fear not God will do whatever they can for themselves. The idea of gold and silver is, what is the best that we can bring to God? What is the most valuable we can bring to God? What will men look at and understand? This is an image of pureness. And gold is an interesting metal, well worth. There's a reason it's valuable. It doesn't tarnish or corrode. It's extremely stable. It doesn't oxidize. Obviously, that tarnish, corrode, oxidize, all the same words. And so it maintains its sheen. It's got that almost eternal type of it has like an everlasting aspect to it, right? It doesn't fade away. Silver does tarnish, and brass does corrode. But they are also valuable metals for certain works, right? Some things are worthy of being made of gold. There are, like I said, in God's house there are many vessels, greater vessels and lesser vessels. We have to consider, what kind of vessel do we want to be? Do we want to be a golden vessel? Well, I hope we're all aspiring to bring forth our best to God, but there will be gold and silver. I wouldn't cry if I was a silver vessel in the house of the Lord. What I don't want to be is a clay pigeon. Clay pigeons, that's what I have, a vessel of clay pigeon, which I used to shoot at with my shotgun. You know what I mean? That is a different kind of vessel. And that's an analogy of something I talk about a lot with what God makes us to be. We can be different kinds of work in the Lord. We are a participant with this. It's somehow, obviously he does it. He provokes it. Every advance I've ever made, I did with the Lord's mighty assistance. You know what I mean? But also, I was very willing, and that's an important part. I don't believe in free will in terms of it governing the universe. Free will does not govern the universe. It doesn't not exist, which is paradoxical. You say, how can free will exist if God? Because you understand what the idea of free will is. I mean, you have an individual will that is tied to who you are, what you were made to be, your entire essence of you. And you decide, but God knows you down to the very hairs of your head and much deeper than that, all the neurons of your brain. So you cannot possibly surprise him because you're just a predictable person. You are you. People want to make God like man. He's not like us. He does not have our perspective. He sees everything predestined. Everything's going according to plan. All things are working to good for those that love God. For us, it's a little more chaotic because we don't know God's will to the extent that we might like. And we are often left somewhat at a loss, to know what to do. And so we make choices and but they don't often feel free to me. I remember a friend of mine had a t-shirt that says, behind every great man, what he says, it's unlike is someone who had no choice, or basically like that. Like they felt like they had no choice. Yeah, because oftentimes I feel like I don't have a choice. I've got to do what God says. Now, it doesn't mean I can't choose to do what he says not to do and have done so. But it only served to teach me that I have no choice. I've got to obey God. So we live a life that is experientially free will. But that is not governing the universe. And what I mean by that is some people think that God's waiting around for us to choose him. No. He draws us to him. He saves us by his power. That's how it actually works. Now, within that, we are willing. We hear the call. And because our eyes are open and we're not blind, we willingly choose it. And those who are blind to the truth, it's not like they're not willingly choosing the things they choose. It's just that for a certain cynical spirit, for a certain wicked spirit, they might choose differently, not because they love righteousness or love God or want to serve him out of a good heart. No, they would choose it because of that hidden wisdom, because they would not crucify the Lord if they knew who he was. Well, that's not good for my health and safety to oppose God if they actually believed in God. So God wants it to be plausible for them to be able to be unbelieving. And it also serves me well because it makes the righteousness which Christ has given me, it solidifies it not only as an imputation, but as a form of sanctification where I learn my lessons and I grow wiser and I amend my ways. As he says over and over and over again, how could he not warn us? You who work iniquity. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people, when there's no rapture and they find themselves facing all these things, they're going to quickly turn away from Christ. And they'll turn to robbing and stealing and killing and raping and pillaging. Or it depends on, or just directly to Antichrist, depending on what kind of world we're about to enter into. If it's going to be, I certainly hope that the Lord is coming, because honestly, I think the tragedy that is about to unfold on the earth is far too great to be anything less than the end of the age. As far as I think that's where it will go. I don't think we're in the end times yet, but I think we're probably on the edge of it, in my opinion. That's not a prediction, it's just a caution, right? I'll tell you what, the New Testament, they're always saying it's the last times. It's like, so in a sense, what I've learned actually recently is we should believe it's right around the corner and act accordingly. Amend our ways. Get your works done. Do the Lord's will. Be ready. He's like the scripture in Luke where he says, who is that wise and faithful servant whom his Lord will find so doing? He will make him ruler over all he hath, to give them meat in due season. I'm probably butchering it. But that's right before he says, I'm come to set the world on fire. And what will I, if I find it already kindled? We are supposed to be doing his work, kindling fires. Metaphorically, of course. Metaphorically. All right. So what we bring to God is very important, the quality thereof. We want things that are going to abide on the altar. Having come to Christ, I want to do his will. You know what I mean? I want to find out all that he's given me to do and do it. Whether that's gold, silver, brass, precious stones, whatever. I just don't want to bring wood and hay and stubble. That stuff. Well, we all have a bit of wood, hay, stubble. In my life, I've done works that are burnable. And I've burned a few, you know? Like every time I've done a few, I've told people about my good deeds. I lost a couple of those. That's okay. I do that I'm willing to give up a few things. You know, we got to be careful though. You know, we don't want to sound a trumpet before us as we go about doing our alms. So let's willingly bring our offerings to God, right? And there are all these precious things. You notice, remember in Mystery Babylon, I just recently released chapter 17 of Revelation. I'm going to put a video up on X today. It's nothing special. It's just the cover with the music. But they don't have, my music doesn't automatically appear on X, so I want it there. I'm trying to create a presence across multiple places. I should also do Rumble. I keep forgetting them. But anyways, all these things, not every one of them, but you see also in Mystery Babylon, there's like an imitation where she gathers to herself all these riches, gold, the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stone, of scarlet and all fine wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, all these things, right down to slaves and souls of men. Right? And what is that? You know, in that image of the beast, you know, that is almost like a mockery of the sanctuary in a sense. You know, she rides upon the beast and he's got the 7 heads and 10 horns, and then she's got all these gold and silver and precious stones. She's clothed in the royal purple and she calls herself a queen. I'm not going to digress into that actually. Okay, so, and now it says, let them make me a sanctuary. What is a sanctuary? Let's look at the word. Let them make me a sanctuary. Oh, well, I'll go back a second. A sacred place. Mikdash. Hold on. Ephod and breastplate. Ephod, I believe, is the hat. I think. We'll find out. I just need to get over here. There we go. So we just got a gust of wind. It seems like it calmed down a bit out there. Well, I prayed we could get through this study. After the pattern of the tabernacle, the pattern of all the instruments, breastplate, ephod. Okay, Paul. Ephod. I like the definition there. An ephod is an ephod. Did you realize that? Oh, thanks. But I think it's a priestly hat. Rarely oiphod. Oh, interesting. Notice it's not a Hebrew word. It is literally ephod. And it says, according to Strong, rarely, whatever, probably of foreign derivation or a girdle. Oh, or particularly the high priest's shoulder piece. So it's not the hat. Okay, I got that wrong. It's okay. I wasn't really thinking as that until then, but now I see. Okay, so it's part of the thing that attaches the breastplate. So it's the ephod and the breastplate. The breastplate usually had like these little like straps to hold it because it's this big gold heavy thing. And so there were straps, and that would be the ephod, I suppose, that actually holds it. Right, and so in the breastplate, I probably didn't need to look that up. Notice it says breastplate sacred pouch. That's because there was a place within the breastplate where they put what was called the Urim and Thummim, which was a form of lots which they used to determine God's will. Which may sound kind of sketchy, but you know, when it's ordered by God in this way, that is how it was done. Remember, it says the die is cast, but the whole disposing thereof is of the Lord. That doesn't necessarily mean I would recommend you taking dice and asking God a question and throwing it. Why? Because the revelation has come. We have so much word, plain words. You know what I mean? Plain speaking. The only reason I could see myself taking a die is like, well, and not that I am. I'm just saying, like, why would one do this? Well, if one did not know, or if one felt like there was, you know, like, oh, is there some other way than what has been said? Better be careful with that. You know, I choose to go, what I look to is I pray, consult the word, examine my conscience, make sure it's clear and I'm not like putting my finger on the scale, and try to use my understanding and the Holy Spirit to determine what God wants. What would he say? Because he's spoken. He's already spoken so many times. That's why it's like, you know, we know, we ought to know. You know, because the problem is a lot of people, and I understand this, because when I realized I used to read the Bible and I didn't hear. I thought I had eyes to see and ears to hear, like Arnold Murray told me I did, because I recognized the fact that the angels had sinned and came down and had children with women. And I recognized the fact that the serpent seed was, they had taken over the tribe of Judah, and all this. Right? I had this open eyes to all these things. There were doctrines that did not add one thing to me, except to make me puffed up in my knowledge and to think that I was better than other Christians who needed to have help seeing the truth. And it was including things like there was no rapture, which also happens to be true, but it's not the most important truth. Though I gotta say, like I said, if you're walking around in that delusion, it's going to be quite a shakeup when Antichrist appears or when severe tribulation comes on the earth and you don't experience any sudden catching away, because the living will not precede the dead. That is for sure. And don't comfort yourself with all kinds of foolish words. Untried faith is not particularly, the faith of America is such. You people aren't all going to get out of this unscathed, not without proving yourself. I really believe that. It's like, as far as like the faith, I want to see your faith. Show me it. And the Lord will determine. I said, to him that hath shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. From him that hath not shall be taken even that which he seems to have. The faith that some people seem to have is going to be snatched from them. And if you don't think that's possible, well, how does that happen? Well, they're not working with the Lord, and the Lord is not working with them. They've gone nominal, and he's letting them. How can they escape that snare of the devil? I do not know. God help us all. Onyx stones, the stones to be set in the ephod and the breastplate. People are going to donate all these things because they become part of that which is used to communicate with God. And I'll tell you what, as I've offered my life to the Lord, he has offered more information to me. Especially the kind I crave most of all, which is, how do I overcome all these sins that so easily compass me about? How do I free myself? That's the secret knowledge I most desire, so that I can be pleasing to God and with good conscience have peace and know I'm serving him without him having to come and tell me, yeah, Paul, you're okay. Because I know what the word says. Do I need him to come and tell me I'm okay? Or do I need, I know I'm okay through the imputed righteousness of Christ. But I think that if you leave the process of sanctification unpursued, unless you're a very simple person who has great faith, you could endanger yourself. Like, take heed lest ye fall, as the Apostle Paul warned very clearly. He wouldn't say that if Romans 10 was just just go ahead and sign on the dotted line and you're saved. And that's all you got to do is just that one time, I confessed and thank you. Now I can go back to sinning, right? Wrong. What do you mean you can never sin again? Oh, I'm not saying that. For brother be overtaken in a fault, you which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, lest thou also be tempted, as it says at the end of Galatians chapter 5, or the first verse of the next chapter, whatever. Somewhere in there, you should know the word. And of course, they are to make an ark. The ark to hold the testimony. And in the book of Revelation, we see the ark in heaven. I suppose that's supposed to explain where it's gone off to. That the Lord had taken up the ark as he took up Elijah. And, that sounds fine to me. A lot of people think it was just destroyed by the Babylonians. Well, a lot of people think Jesus was eaten by dogs, but they're full of it. Just like the other. That's why, like they would say, that explains the absence of his body. Okay. Keep deluding yourself. Comfort yourself. You are afraid of the light. There are lots of fairy tales to tell yourself. Go ahead. I've seen otherwise. I know otherwise. So, the ark contains the testimony. The ark isn't actually unique. In Egypt, there were many such boxes for things to hold sacred objects. And this is what I mean about, it wasn't unique? No, it wasn't. This one was special, obviously, because it's the one God commanded made. But it's a symbol that they understood. That's why God has, in the book of Revelation, trumpets. What does God need for trumpets? And in fact, what they described are not trumpets. A trumpet sounds, and then you see something that's totally not a trumpet. like a mountain burning with fire being cast into the sea. You say, well, what's that got to do with trumpeting? It's a sign. It's a signal. People understand a trumpet as a signal. So God uses those things to help us understand. They understood this kind of an object as holding something sacred and something on which a sacred thing could appear. Just like God passing between the meat for Abraham. He didn't tell Abraham what that meant because he didn't have to, because Abraham knew exactly what that meant. That's how they made contracts in his world. And many things. And you see that. There was something in particular that we went over in the couple, was it 23 early on? Oh, yeah, about things like the uncleanness of women in their menstruation and stuff. Let's say, come not at your wives. You know, the New Testament says the marriage bed is sanctified. There's nothing unclean of itself. But they regarded certain things as unclean. Like it said to the Egyptians, for them, shepherds were unclean. They were an abomination. That's why Noah had unclean and clean animals before the law, because they had customs. And a lot of those customs are incorporated into the law, because and that you violate them not. Because what part of it, okay, these are customs familiar to you. You're going to be a special people and adhere to those customs and to the customs I'm going to lay on you. Additionally, because you understand things like customs and dress and clothing, outward apparel. But Jesus also had a critique of those things about being outwardly righteous and outwardly putting on the thing and doing all the customs, but inwardly neglecting the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. Willingly bringing the offering with your whole heart and with joy. You rather, we'll do it because we have to. Is there any way I can get out of my obligation? What's the least I can do? You know, and still fulfill what God wants, you know. That's the attitude. It's the attitude of the high school dropout, right? Well, not the high school dropout, but the kid who wants to avoid going to summer. What's the least I have to do to graduate? What's the minimum credits? That was my attitude. That's why my final semester, because I had done well in school, I was out by 1 o'clock because I had like 2-3 periods I didn't have to take. Because I had enough credits. I had more than enough, you know. But we're not dealing with credits with God. It's not about the credits. You know, it's about becoming like Him. That's a journey. You know, I mean, that's a long way off from where I started. And so, if He gives us time to live, and we find ourselves not undertaking that journey, you know, what kind of Christian are we? What kind of believer are we? What kind of faith do we have? Have we allowed ourselves to be deceived by people who say, just go back to your life? We'll take care of all the sacred things here at church. You just come and bring your donation. We'll preach the gospel to other people. You just live your life. They don't say it that way, but somehow it just works out that way. I think it's a problem with their doctrine. Because like I said, when you think all you have to do is confess, I mean, and truly that is salvation, confession and faith. That is what makes you saved. But to think that it ends at that point, that's the beginning of your faith, not the end. Salvation is the end. Faith is the beginning. Actually, the mercy of God is truly the beginning. The election and calling of God is the beginning. A little too far back. We were on, okay. So, we're not that far yet. Oh boy. Okay, now we get to making the ark. Yeah, we're talking about 2 cubits and a half by 3. A cubit is the length of your forearm, basically, or their forearm, or whatever forearm there was. There was a sacred cubit and such that was used. You know, a lot of things depends on what cubit you use. Like I said, there's a lot of people who have gone through the physical details. But to me, as shadows of the heavenly, the actual construction of these things is not going to be a focus of my study. And that's why we will be able to get through a lot of this quickly, even though we've taken 40 minutes to get through 10 verses. But again, we're looking at the pattern. You know, the next chapter, 2 chapters, is about the tabernacle, and a lot of that is not going to be particularly lengthy. Overlay it with pure gold, the ark, within and without shall we'll overlay it, and make it upon the crown of gold round about. Often you'll see like a sort of gold rim around the top of the ark when you see portrayals of it. I can see in my mind. Then the 2 angels with their wings overspread, that center area. I'm not sure well, whatever. And he says, make staves of shittim wood and overlay. What is shittim wood? It comes from the shittim tree. I don't know where it is, what it is, but I'm sure it's a good, nice, good wood. Something that's particularly good for constructing things and valuable in that sense, right? Staves of shittim wood, and then overlay them with gold. Put the staves in the rings by the ark. The ark may be borne with them. The whole ark is made of gold, incorruptible, pure. A mercy seat of pure gold. The mercy seat. Notice God's seat is a seat of mercy. From which his mercy comes, his forgiveness. Because this tabernacle for him to dwell in. And notice he likes to define his place by the central thing, which is mercy. So Jesus said the weightier matters of the law are judgment, mercy. Because judgment is important. But mercy. Why? Because we need mercy. We need mercy. We got to get it from God. And we need to show it ourselves. He did that, I remember Bullinger says, no. You don't have to show mercy to be saved. You just got to believe. I understand. But if you say you believe and then show no mercy, I got to say, I don't think you know Jesus, and he probably doesn't know you. That's what the thing is like. That's why he says, I don't know you, because you don't know him. That's why it ends up getting like that. I don't know who you are. You're cheering for people who are doing the killing. You know what I mean? And opposing those who would seek peace. We should all be seeking peace in this world, but that's not what's going on. I don't think the end of this world is... wars are determined. Wars and rumors of wars. That isn't what really gets me going, honestly. It wasn't, like I said, to me, the thing to look for are fearful signs in the heavens. Which I think we are... I've got some thoughts on that. There's an inevitable calamity coming. And depending on, every mountain and island will be moved out of their places, as it's written. Thou shalt make 2 cherubims of gold. Beaten work shalt thou make them. As they beat it out, not carved, not graven, but beaten with a, that's particular. Which is interesting because, there was no images, but some images, which is interesting. No images of a god. These cherubim are like servants of God. What is a cherubim? Well, that's a matter of dispute, right? Well, not so much dispute as like speculation. That's usually considered, they have wings overspreading, right? Thou, the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Speaking of the prince of Tyre, but also as all these, every wicked king, Christ is King of Kings. He's the ultimate righteous king. But there is another form of sort of a king of kings, which is he is the king of all the evil kings. He is the culmination and the distillation of all the evil that men do when they take up kingship and godhood, essentially, because Pharaoh was regarded as a god, and many kings begin to think of themselves as God. And even if they don't think of themselves as God, they do, like God, believe they have a right to decide who lives and who dies. But unlike God, they have no right to decide such things. Not in the way they do. Not in the arbitrary way they do. See, God can arbitrarily declare, you live, you die. You live, you die. Because he gives life. He didn't have to bring any of us to life. And God has that, people think God is bloodthirsty. No, we're sinful and we're not worthy of life. We don't want to accept that for some reason. This life is coming and going and passing away. The earth is to be destroyed. He's turning it upside down and scraping it out, and the inhabitants thereof are going to be screaming. That's it. It's coming. God will destroy the world. And all that dwell in it, maybe not every single person, but all the works thereof will be burned up. As it said. I believe there'll be survivors, but, hopefully it's not, men think actually it'll be worse than I think the scriptures say, which is a third part of men will be killed. Maybe, but that's just from one particular thing. So it could be even worse. But we will see. But there is a point at which all of a sudden it becomes impossible to die, which is interesting. The Lord suspends death, perhaps. Perhaps that'd be interesting. Imagine if as the final calamity descends, suddenly men can't die. They find themselves in the midst of the terrible calamity. No, you watch it to the very end. Okay, make a sanctuary. Okay, I'm back on the wrong screen. Why did I go over there? Oh, cherubim. So I'm just going to look up the word. The word, of course, is the Hebrew version of this, which is cherubim. Okay, we're down there. Make one cherub. Okay. Well, cherubim is plural of cherub, so I'm just going to go right to cherub. Cherub, as it's written. Probably in order of angelic beings. There you go. See, that's how much we know about it. Interesting. Yep. So, again, I don't get into intruding into those things which my eyes have not seen. I'm not big on, like, I didn't see the ark. I wasn't there when they made it. There are, the Companion Bible has some interesting stuff on the tabernacle at the back of it. I'm going to see if I got time. I don't know what the value is, per se, of me scanning an image of it, bringing it out. There are videos on the tabernacle. There's videos on the ark and all that stuff. People who get into that, the shape and this and that. But what does it all mean to us? That's what I'm interested in. That's what we're going to talk about. Because these things are passed away. They were but shadows of what was to come. The cherubims on each side of the ark. I know it's interesting that the Prince of Tyre was likened to a cherub that covereth, because that was the purpose. They stretched forth their wings to cover the mercy seat. And the idea is of some that, and I don't think it's ridiculous, because my perspective is that God created Satan not like with some sort of high hopes of his ongoing faithfulness. He knew there was iniquity going to come from this one, just like all of us. I can't imagine that God was like, what? You're kidding me. Just like with Judas, have I not chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil? And if God put two cherubims over the mercy seat, could not one be evil and one good? One representing and the other representing, because the mercy seat does not always light up and say mercy granted. Sometimes the mercy seat is silent and the judgment and wrath pours forth. Like it made me think of the Raiders of the Lost Ark when they open up the ark and they all get torched. Okay. That's what I mean. It's like there is you're not accepted. But the cherub that represents that is of that unaccepted. I suppose that's my speculation. Okay, don't make that into a dogma for me. Okay, I don't want disciples of Paul in the future. I am not your shepherd. The Lord Jesus is your shepherd. I'm just one of his teachers. Okay, faces the mercy seat. The terms face the mercy seat. Thou shalt put the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee. Not just I don't believe it was just the 2 tables of stone, but also the fullness of the law, of the Pentateuch, I suppose. Or whatever portion of that was extant at Moses' time. I don't have a problem with thinking, later on, there was another rewritten version that got incorporated somehow or something, because it does feel a little disjointed at times, doesn't it? I think so. Like I said, the first giving the commandments with that little bit of law, seems like that should come later. I'm wrong, of course, because it is where it is. But just whatever. Like I said, I like to acknowledge these things because to me, it strengthens me in the faith, because I don't have to be flummoxed by people throwing standards at me that I don't think the Bible has to live up to. I don't think it's that kind of revelation. We're not supposed to just rely on the letter, because it can kill. You get the wrong idea. I was listening to my Joel 3 the other day, and I was like, wow, I'm going to probably publish it. I'm like, it'd be fun, because it sounds really good for Israel and Judah. They're going to be, all these bad, but it's like, I realized, just as it said of the woman, just as Jesus said to the woman, the Lord wants people to worship him everywhere, essentially. That was the take up from it. Wherever you are. This is where I live right here. This is my Mount Zion. This is where I worship God. This is sacred ground where I must be holy. That was another one. Take off your shoes for on holy ground. Does that really matter to God? At times I've thought, should I be praying with my shoes on? Or is it okay that I pray on the toilet? Right? I bet you've thought that. Right? You suddenly talking to God while you're defecating. Is that okay? You know, in the Old Testament, they were like, what? No, of course. You know, like, I don't really think that matters because we are vile creatures, but I'm sanctified by the blood of Jesus. That is the least of my disgusting things. The fact that I got to use the toilet. That's the least of the things about me which the Lord finds reprehensible. He got down on his hands and knees and washed his disciples' feet. They were definitely stepping in animal dung and all that stuff because they didn't have proper sanitation. You know what I mean? So there's uncleanness all over the place. Him washing their feet shows he is not disgusted with our mere physical dirtiness. That's not what God really cares about. Now, because men, it would seem weird, I can come into the presence of God with my shoes on. You weren't even allowed to go into Pharaoh's presence without certain preparations. You know what I mean? How dare you approach Pharaoh without da-da-da? God is so much greater. He has to be greater than whatever customs we have about respect towards men had to be applied to God. So take off your shoes. Bow your head. You do so for little men kings. You darn well going to do it for God. I should have said damn. Because that's how I talk. And that's not cursing. Well, it is cursing, I guess, but not cursing people. Well, what I'm saying is you do what you would do. If you honor men in that way, you better honor God. Don't fear men more than God. Now, I don't bow before men. I don't honor men. So it's like I want to honor God in that way which he most delights in, which is in the spirit. I don't want to be flippant about the outward. I don't want to cause a brother to stumble by being too profane. You know, I don't want to be foolish like that. That's why I try to control my language. Not just on the Bible study, but in my life, I do. Though sometimes I get a little, that's the least of my problems. Really, that's the least of the things. I want to focus my will on the worst things and then get down to the details, knowing I've got to get to them. I know every idle word has to be brought into subjection to Christ. I know every idle look has to be brought into subjection to Christ, but it's anything bigger than that is more important first. And you got to prioritize, though, remembering every little thing matters. That's why there's such detail in the ark. Every little detail matters. It's got to be just so. If it's just so with men, then it's just so with God. You know what I mean? That as far as that's how you do things. You want everything just so. I do. I'm like that. I'm very demanding. My wife will tell you. My children will tell you. I'm demanding. It must be just so. And that's why God is that way with me. Oh, that's how you think it ought to be, Paul? And so it shall be unto you. But don't think you can just get by with being completely slack, because the Lord is not slack. It's not entirely a misunderstanding. You know, yes, it may not truly matter ultimately if I'm wearing my shoes when I approach to God. But if it matters to me, then it does matter. You know, like I says, to him that, to him that hath conscience of the idol, to him it's sin. If you eat from the idol's meat and you believe that that's a sin, it's a sin. That's how it works. It's your conscience is somewhat a part of the game here because we don't really understand God. And he reveals himself to us through ways we understand. That's why we find the Trinity so hard to understand, because it is not part of our experience. And, we have to just look at it and accept it as the way it is revealed. 2 cubits high, right? Length thereof, overlay it with pure gold, make the crown of gold. We talked about that. Make on the border a handbreadth about, and did I skip anything? Not really. He didn't explain the mercy seat. He just said you got to make it. So we're just kind of touching on it. We'll go for a nice long study today. The border of the handbreadth round about, and thou shalt make unto it a border of an handbreadth. Again, a lot of things are measured by the human body. You know what's kind of interesting? Even the great cathedrals of the Middle Ages, you realize they weren't made with modern techniques. I remember watching like the old techniques that the masons used to use. There's guys who understand, like with a piece of rope a certain length, and you divide it by thirds and you get these cool patterns and stuff. It was amazing because they didn't use calculators, or, you think about all those Gothic cathedrals. They did it without a lot of modern knowledge, and they make things much more beautiful than they're making today. Even the gaudy old McDonald's was somehow more charming than the new one that looks like a bank. It's this dull gray building with their dull gray food. Don't eat that stuff, folks. Not except in when you're traveling or something like that. Don't be eating lunch there every day. It's not good for you. I always believe that, like it says, they shall take up serpents. Some people don't believe in these verses. They're still true. They shall take up serpents, and they shall not be bitten. They shall drink poison. You gotta understand that. Again, don't be too literal about it. Don't. It's just like he said, the angels will give you charge. They'll take you up. The less you dash your foot against a stone. That's true. But you want to tempt God with that? Don't be a fool. Same thing with drinking poison. It means God will protect you when you're doing his work. When you're following him, he will protect you from the enemy and from your ignorance even sometimes. Because we do things ignorantly. Oftentimes God won't suffer us to face the consequences. But when we have knowledge, we got to be careful. I know that the poison that is in our diet is a cumulative thing. It's like if you eat a lot of seed oils and stuff, it's like you can't avoid it on some, but don't buy seed oils and use them yourself at home. Get olive oil like you're supposed to. Get something that makes oil. Use animal fats. They lied to us to get us to eat all these unhealthy products that they were like, well, this is lower fat, lower this, lower that, lower cholesterol. They didn't know what they were talking about. I think that all that stuff was driven by the waste products they had that they wanted to foist on people. We're all this, whatever. Be careful with the world. There's deceivers, there's poisons, there's all those things. The Lord will protect you, but, if we see ourselves suffering ill effects from something, we don't understand why. Why is it we suddenly have a huge obesity epidemic over the past 20 years? I should say 30 years. Actually, 35. There's reasons. And it's not because we suddenly all got lazy. Why are you so hungry for all that? They did experiments with rats. They gave them like junk food, and they ate it. And then when they had health problems, but then when they tried to give them good food, they wouldn't eat it. They refused it. They'd gotten so used to the junk. I know it's kind of hard, but for your life's sake, you might consider getting used to eating real food. This is a little aside. 4 rings of gold, and the rings 4 corners, and the rings 4 feet. There would be 4 feet on the bottom. There would be rings above the corners and the feet, I suppose, whatever, the physical thing. I've seen pictures of the ark. I'm just going based on that. Against borders shall the rings be for places for the staves. Yeah, you're going to have the staves go through, and then they have these things that can lift it and move the ark around, because the tabernacle got moved around because they were on the move. And that's why I have this sort of movable sanctuary. It's a tabernacle and sanctuary. It's not a temple. It was a tent that they would enter into to commune with God. There was a holy place and a most holy place. I'm getting ahead of that. Overlay everything with gold, right? The staves. Then there are dishes and spoons, all these little instruments for the whatever different functions it's got to carry. I almost wanted to go into the NIV for that. Let's just look at verse 29 and 30 with the NIV. I was just curious if they had any different take on the dishes and spoons. It probably means more like utensils. You have different utensils like for making fire and for moving things and picking up the flesh of the sacrifice and all that, or whatever happens to be sprinkling the altar. All right. Let's see. What verse were we on? 29, 30, right? Huh, that's interesting. Look at this. Am I in the right place? This is just weird. Am I not? All right. What's going on here? The lampstand. Did I skip the lampstand? How did I get so far ahead? Something happened here with my mouse scrolling. Somehow I jumped ahead. Yeah, I didn't even get to that. 22. All right, whatever. Here are the rings. We were at 15, I think. Put into the ark the testimony, mercy seat of pure gold. Okay. 2 cherubims of gold. We talked about cherubim, one on one end, one on the other end. Even of the mercy seat, the cherubim shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings. Their faces look towards each other. Their face in the middle. And then thou shalt put the mercy seat above the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony. The mercy seat, whatever that is, I don't know if it's a seat, a little chair, or some sort of... He doesn't describe it, not yet, at least. I don't ever remember a description of it. But it has to be put there, above upon the ark. It could be just a stool, I suppose. And that's where the Lord would meet with them and commune with thee, from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubims, the place of judgment and mercy. Of all things that I will give thee command unto the children of Israel. When you come to God, that's where it would be. Thou shalt also make a table. There's where we are. A table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. Okay. Overlay that with gold, the table, and a crown of gold around it. This is a table that's separate from the ark. And then also 4 rings of gold. We did get to that. And thou shalt make of the staves of shittim wood and overlay them with gold, that they may be borne with them. Oh, I'm sorry. I went back here and I was figuring it out, and I left you guys over there. Oh well. But all right, wait. Notice it's just weird. Oh, no wonder. I can't see apparently. I was in Exodus 37. Somehow I got jumped up to 37. It must have been when I jumped to the NIV. It just shuffled me over to 20. No wonder I was getting... It was weird because it was like all the same things, except it was like they. Okay. Okay, so we hadn't gotten to the lampstand yet. Okay. That was definitely mentally trying for me. Okay, we are at verse 29. We did cover most of that. I think I just missed a little thing about the whatever. All right. The dishes. Now we can get back to what I want to know about was the dishes and stuff. Okay. Because that one ended at verse 29. And I was like, what's going on? I bet all of you were yelling, you're on 27, right? Or 37. Don't look up there. My eyes. Okay, so make the plates and the dishes pure gold, as well as its pitchers and bowls for the pouring out of offerings. Put the bread of the presence. That's an interesting translation. The bread of the presence. I guess the idea of showing forth his presence. I wonder where they get that. That's how the modern scholars have interpreted the showbread. I remind you, that is the showbread which it was not lawful for anyone to eat except for the high priest. And but he gave it to David when he was hungered. So like I says, the Lord will make exceptions for his anointed. Just like he makes most of the time if people drink poison, they die. But I'll make an exception for my anointed. Even those laws can be abrogated because they're not laws. God is Lord over all, even the biological functions, and he can protect us. Like I said, I would not do it foolishly. Paul was nearly stoned to death, but he survived, and the Lord preserved him. Okay. Where was this showbread? Oh, I want to go back to King James and see the mercy seat. The table of the showbread. Yeah, the table is for the bread. Lechem. Bread, food. Behem, like Bethlehem. Bethlehem, apparently. Bethlehem is the house of bread. And it means bread. So is there a secondary word here in this? Did I miss that? Is there 2 words? So I wonder if there's actually 2 words there. They call it the bread of the presence. Oh, because, show bread before me always. See, I think that word, the show bread, literally is, this word before is the show part, I think. It means face or faces. Is that where it comes from? Face bread? I'd have to get out my Greens Interlinear because the Bible Hub has sort of let me down here with the way they do this. Oh, I can go there, can I? They have some sort of interlinear Bible. Let's see. Is the greens here? Because that's old. Almost down here. Wait. Oh my goodness. So expositors, dictionary. Interlinear. Let's try interlinear verses. Let's see what's really there. Is it 20? I don't want one. I want, I gotta skip ahead. That's not gonna be cool. Oh, whatever. Here we go. 7, 8, 9, 10, 29. There you go. 25, 29. Now let's see what really is behind the showbread. Oh, it's actually 30, because that's the actual one. Okay. So notice you read from right to left and said, and you shall set on the table the bread of the presence. Panim, face. See, that's the bread of, and this lepane. Oh, see, it is, the word happens twice. I get it. Panim, pane. The bread, I don't know, of my face, of that I'm facing, or that, or whatever. The bread of the face, okay, they call it the presence of the face of God before me, before my face. All right, whatever. Okay, so there we go. I'm not sure what that means, though, because it's not the manna, right? But it's a special bread there that is before the presence of God. There's supposed to be always bread. Actually, that's all. What it means, there's always supposed to be bread in front of God. I am the bread of life. I am the bread which came down from heaven. It symbolizes that constant provision, I think. The constant provision that God provides, and the priest goes and partakes of it. If he says, I stand at the door and knock. If any man, this is Christ, remember, the veil is rent. We can all go to the most holy of holies and sit down with him and eat the showbread with him. I will sup with him and he with me. Okay? We have the real presence of Christ in our life now. Now that the veil has been rent, and we sit down and dine with him. So that's the meaning of the showbread for us. It's something that David ate, which was not lawful for anyone but the high priest, and we also eat, as though we were high priests. That's why I say, this is Zion. This is where I will make my stand. Or wherever I happen to be, wherever the Lord calls me, obviously, it will be the sacred ground on which I stand. And I will sanctify myself to stand on that ground in holiness by the power of his blood and by the faithfulness of his work in me. Like I said, we can walk worthy. He will help us. Especially as the days grow nearer. I mean, we should be all the more attentive. All right, let's go back to that. Well, I want to talk about the candlestick, and then I guess because that's basically everything left, and then we go on to 26, which I already read, which we'll read again tomorrow, even though it's quite a... I'm going to have to read it. I'll just... I don't know. I'm going to look ahead and see what I'm going to do. We already have read that. I might choose to read 27 and then discuss 26 because it is just all about the tabernacle. I will see. I don't want to be lazy. Like I said, not all, like I said, the letter kills, but the spirit makes alive. There is a spiritual aspect to all this. The dishes, the spoons, etc. Now the candlestick of pure gold. Beaten work, his shaft, his branches, his bowls, his knops, his flowers shall be of the same. We might save this for tomorrow too, but I'm going to talk about it just a little bit because I immediately, as I was reading it, of course, immediately comes to mind the book of Revelation, the 7 candlesticks. The 7 candlesticks. And this was speaking to me very strongly yesterday. I was meditating and praying. I always say the 7 candlesticks are the 7 churches, and you all are the churches. Jesus said, no man lighteth a candle and putteth it on a bushel, but you put it on a candlestick. We are all supposed to be lights set upon candlesticks, giving light, showing forth the word of life, as Christ commanded. People always want stars. The stars are the angels of the churches, right? The stars are going to let you down. Angels are going to let you down. We need to be serving the holy oil of the Spirit, filling the lamp, and giving light. That is our purpose. Each individual one of us, we fulfill that. There is no man, no church, no earthly church that's going to fulfill this. That's why the churches that Christ rebukes in Revelation, of the 7, only 2 seem to have their candlestick left in their place when the time to come to serve him and to resist Satan comes. And not resist with force of earthly arms, but with the sword of the Spirit, with the weapons of God, the weapons of his warfare, which are mighty through God. We must make war. He will make war against us. And that is because we will war against him. Why do you think it talks about all those war metaphors? What do you think, we're just supposed to just sit back and take it? I get Christians telling me that. They're just waiting for the rapture. I'm not waiting for the rapture. I'm preparing for a battle. If you're not preparing for a battle, you aren't paying attention. In fact, I think that is for all time. Even if the Lord didn't return in my lifetime, it would be for the next generation to continue to prepare for the battle, because it will come. Candlestick is of pure gold, of beaten work. Again, the candlesticks must be holy. The true churches must be holy. If the candlestick is taken out of the way, that is not a good thing. But only 2 remain. The 2 candlesticks are the 2 witnesses. They are not superstars. But just like Jesus said to the woman, God wants people to worship him, not just at Jerusalem, but in the spirit and in truth. And wherever men do so, the light of God is shining, and the candlestick is high. So don't think to look for some hero Christian to come. You're the hero Christian that's going to come to save you and yours, as far as to bring the truth, to do the Lord's work. As he is a savior, he raises up saviors who do the work of salvation, who bring it forward. Not that we save, but the way I say it, but by your preaching and by the truth that you speak, men will be saved through the power of Christ. We participate with him in the work. That is what we're called to. And we don't want, I get it. I always have a distaste when people talk about, we've saved people with our, but it's true. Christ uses us. That's the whole point, is he wants to use us. If we are not being useful in that regard, then what use are we? So thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold, branches, his bowls, his knops, his flowers shall be of the same, all gold. Knops, flowers. I'm assuming these are ornamental type things that are on the candlestick when you make it. Let's glance at the NIV on this one. Oh, I did a bad thing. No, I did. That's okay. There we go. Let's see how they go with it for modern English readers. Maybe I'll just read this real quick and be done. 6 branches are to extend from the sides of the lampstand, 3 on one side and 3 on the other. And also there's a central one, the 7th. 3 cups shall be like almond flowers. 3 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms are to be on one branch. Buds and blossoms like the thing. It's sort of like a living almond type tree motif for the candlestick. It's ornamented like a living almond branch, which is interesting because it's like a living branch, and then it brings forth light from those things. Christ is called the branch, though it's not specified as an olive branch. He's called the vine. He's called many things. But this living branch of almond wood does definitely make me think of that branch, that living tree of life, that growth that represents life, right? Branches and trees and flowers and buds are all metaphorical of the bringing forth of fruit and life. The true fruit in life comes through Jesus Christ. The fruit that abides, the fruit that you lay on the altar that is acceptable to God is the best. And we got to bring our best. And if we don't have our best, the Christ can teach us to bring forth better. But we must seek him. Okay, okay. The only thing we're going to do tomorrow, since we've already read the King James, the NIV might go a little better. So we're going to read from the NIV, I think, for chapter 26. Then we'll go back to the King James for 27. But that might be interesting since we've already read it. And this will probably be an easier read, considering the fact, like I said, a lot of the word choices they made probably made more sense in 1611. Whereas now I understand much more clearly. And this is an interpretation I'm willing to accept, like I said, because we're looking at for spiritual things, not for carnal things. And so this is good enough for me. So on the lampstand there are 4 cups shaped like almond flowers with buds and blossoms. 1 bud shall be under the first pair of branches extending from the lampstand, a 2nd bud under the 2nd pair, and a 3rd bud under the 3rd bud. So there's like buds under branches, and very beautiful. 6 branches in all. The buds and branches shall all be of one piece with the lampstand, hammered out of pure gold. They don't do casting work. They don't do... It has to be unique, too, because you can't pour it in like a casting. And they didn't want it graven. Graving was no. Then make it 7 lamps and make its 7 lamps, the things that actually carry the light, which is probably the top part, and set them upon it so that they light the space in front of it. Its wick trimmers and trays are also to be of pure gold. A talent of pure gold is to be used for the lampstand and all these accessories. So 1 talent for the lampstand. It's interesting. Because in the parable of the talents, right, the guy who had only faith had 1 talent. And notice you only need 1 talent to be considered part of the 7 candlesticks. 1 talent. But beware, lest you be like the man with 1 talent and think that faith alone is going to be all that God expects you to have. He expects you to appear in white. And that's a work that he does. And if you're not participating with him in it, let your eyes be open now so you can see and begin that work, because it's an important work for you as a Christian. You should not let any of that, don't seem to come short of it. You will, because there are those who will. They will deceive themselves. So I'm just a fine Christian. I obeyed the doctrine. I just believed and did this and that. I want to do good things. I'll go out and do the soup kitchen. I'll go out and do that, and I'll go out and do this. But there's something wrong. Something's not multiplying here for God. I want to be very careful to make sure that we do those things. Because like I said, I just don't want to deceive myself thinking I was saved when I was not. I'm pretty sure that's not true, because the Lord has opened my eyes on multiple occasions to my follies. A talent of pure gold to be used for the lampstand and all these accessories. See that you make them according to the pattern. It's a pattern. I show you in the mountain the pattern. And it is also a pattern that we try to understand at this far removed date from these things which were mere shadows of what was to come in Christ. But we see how they compare. The lampstand. All these things are symbolically significant to us, even in these final hours. Being a little dramatic on that. But, upon whoever it is that the ends of the world do come, they will do well to take heed to all the lessons the Scripture is teaching us. Anyways. Oh, yeah, I didn't get into I noticed they say, maybe those hides are not the ones we think. Fine, whatever. I'm not, whether it's badgers or something else, I'm not particularly, there could be something more significant in that. If I had gone through and checked out those animals, maybe I would have found spiritual significance in the coverings of the hides. Because none of it is without significance. But in the time we have, we can only glean so much. And I only have so much revealed to me, so we'll just leave it till next time. Remember, the testimony of Jesus is a spirit of prophecy. We'll be back next time for the next chapter.
I am sought of them that asked not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me, unto a nation that was not called by my name. I have spread out my hands all the day to a rebellious people, which walked in a way that was not good after their own thoughts, of people that provoked me to anger continually to my face, that sacrifice in God hymns, and burn incense upon altars of brick, which remain among the graves, which lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh, and the broth of abominations is in their vessels, which say,